Hello, my friends. I welcome you to another episode of Aditya Talks. And today we have Mr. Aditya Mittal joining us from USA. And he's going to share some interesting knowledge and his experiences working in many companies and founding his own startup at a young age. How did he do this at such a young time in his life? And what can you learn from his story? Today we are going to interview him. Welcome to the show, Aditya.
Hi, it's great to be here. How have you been doing, Aditya?
I'm awesome. What about you?
I'm doing incredible too. I'm glad to be on the show.
Yeah. So, for the benefit of our interviewees, can you just share some? Can you just give some insight into your story, your background, and so that our viewers can understand more about you?
Yeah, of course. My name's Aditya. I'm currently a 16-year-old senior that's in the Bay Area, California. And recently, I've been going really deep into artificial intelligence and bioinformatics, which are two passions of mine. Um, I started off learning about artificial intelligence somewhere around seventh grade. And since my parents were software engineers, I learned a lot from them. And they kind of guided my learning as I learned Python and other similar languages. And I feel like I've been greatly influenced by them and kind of the path that they've taken. And I've followed somewhat of a similar pathway. So, as I've done artificial intelligence, I've done internships and research in the field. So, for instance, one of my most recent projects actually looking at genetic factors for increasing leukemia cell proliferation. So essentially looking at what specific genetic variants we can change inside of the body to decrease the chance of leukemia replicating inside the body. So looking at cancer research, I've also looked a little bit more into the education side of things. So I've been developing an extracurricular recommendation service for my startup. I've been looking essentially at how we can use um, a huge consortium of student interests and their academic majors to essentially determine the best extracurricular recommendation for them, because this is a problem that a lot of people are facing in the Bay Area, where there's so many extracurriculars for people to look at, but they don't actually know what to choose from. So because counselors in my school have over thousands of students to take care of and guide, I feel like this would be a useful recommendation for them, and I've already started beta testing this in my school.
Thank you. That is really interesting. And so, what you now that my viewers, this is going to be a very interesting episode. Stay tuned till the end. And further, without further ado, Aditya, a lot of children don't have an idea of what they want to do in the future and don't are generally confused as to what they want to do throughout the day and don't have anything aimed or planned for the day. This is a problem that I used to face in my younger days as well, and I understand it's a deep problem. So can you tell us how you found your why, and what is your why, what is your purpose, what motivates you to wake up every day in the morning and learn more about the world and impact more people?
So I think my why is kind of like it also it kind of encompasses a lot. So I think in terms of that, I think computer science has always been something that I've been very interested in. And I think my why is kind of using computer science to impact people around the globe. And I feel like I'm primarily interested in doing that through the healthcare services, because I feel there's so much potential for change over there. There's so many people we can save. There's, I think, millions of people that lose their lives to cancer and related diseases. And I feel that it's not easy to push the marker, but I want to be part of that change to push the marker to a lower number. And how do people find this why? I think it's just a matter of experimentation. It takes a long time to try to figure this out, but I feel you just have to keep trying out different things, which is why I feel middle school and high school are uniquely suited to that you can explore things outside of your school environment and see things that you're interested in. So, for instance, I knew I was interested in computer science, but I didn't know what I would be interested in. So I pursued like game design, app design, web design, but none of those things really interested in me until I got into machine learning and data science. So that's kind of why I think that it's very important to explore and try different things out. Don't just stay confined to one niche or just in school. See what you're interested in early, so you don't get like stuck in like a dead end job or something that you're not interested in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. This get a bite of everything. and then decide what you want to do. This was the same thing I did when I was 2 years ago maybe. But I tried coding, I tried design, I tried everything that I wanted to do that felt interesting, and ultimately I started to read a lot, share my stories, and started to speak a lot, and that brought me here, and I am happy to be what I am today. So viewers, follow what you think is the best for you. Try everything. Thank you for sharing that insight. So, what do you think our viewers can learn from you? What skills and habits should every child should what do you think? What habits should every child have around the world?
So I think like of course everyone starts off at a different skill level and there's like different varying opportunities that people have in the globe. But I think the most important thing is the passion and drive to learn. And I think that's something that can't exactly be replicated in people and something that you have regardless of what opportunities you have. And I think this is something my parents have always told me. If you have the drive, you will always get somewhere in life. And I feel like if you show that drive on day one and day 100 and day 1,000, then you'll eventually do something that's important and groundbreaking. So I feel the most important thing that I want to get across is just continuing that passion and drive. And I think there have been days and there have been weeks and there have been months even where I've felt demotivated to do things because there hasn't been much progress. But I feel the most important thing is don't let that take away from your why and your passion, because there will be times in your life where you will have to struggle and deal with hardships. But I feel that if you let that be the reason why you don't pursue your passion, that's good. It's going to make your life in general worse and miserable.
Yeah. If you the One of the most important things when you pursue something in your life is you should have an iron will. If you really are passionate about something, even if you're down in the dumps, don't feel regret. You can always bounce back in your life. You don't know what God or life has in store for you. You can do anything. So that thank you for sharing that once again. So, what kind of attitude do you think is necessary to become successful and learn a lot early in life? What kind of attitude?
So I think the major thing that you need to have is an inquisitive attitude. So a lot of my best ideas come from just looking at the world around me and realizing what are ways I can kind of optimize things that I feel are causing friction in life. So one of the things I was looking at was actually in virtual learning, where essentially I wasn't seeing any engagement inside of my Zoom breakout rooms in my classes, and I felt like my classes were very like dead, if that's the word for it. And one thing that I realized was that teachers are just randomly assigning people to breakout rooms. And I felt like if people are paired with similar personalities, like if people are more extrovert, then they can be together. People are more introverted. I feel like if we were able to pair people based on personality in breakout rooms, I feel that'll produce a more conducive environment for people to actually express themselves. So what I did was create a personality classifier to basically fix this issue, and I ended up rolling this out in 3 classrooms in my school, and each of the classes reported significantly increased engagement, but like 30% more, 30% or more. So I feel like small things like this, if you just have an inquisitive mindset and see how exactly you can fix small problems in the world, I think that's what's going to ultimately make you successful. And right now, since we aren't able to do much impact because we're not like in a laboratory or we don't have enough funding, just realizing the small things you can do in life to try to fix issues and like reduce the amount of friction between certain things. I think that's the most important thing you can do at this point, just to try to build your understanding of the field so you can make a bigger impact in the future.
I agree with you. Uh, a lot of people have this mentality that I'm going to solve a big problem in my life, and every problem is a problem, and you rise up the ranks when you try A level problem, then B level, then C level, then D level, whatever. Start from the basics, and of course, be inquisitive. Thank you for sharing that. What are your hobbies? What do you think? What do you do throughout your day and when you have free time?
Yeah, so there's like two things I primarily do. And most of these things are just to kind of relax my mind, to essentially just allow myself to think, like get away from, like, I guess, like the rush of life, the flow of life. And the first thing is I play music, so I play piano and guitar every single day. I've been doing this for the last like 3 years, and I feel um just having that time to essentially just de-stress, not think about anything, and essentially just think about the music. I feel that allows you to be more productive, which is an interesting thought. But sometimes you have to go 0 to 10, 0 out of 10. So basically not do anything to go 10 out of 10 in the future. So like 10 out of 10 is being like your most productive. I feel like a lot of people operate on this kind of 7 to 10 or 6 to 10, 6 out of 10 scale, where they're thinking that they're being their most productive, but they actually aren't, because what they're doing is they're stressing themselves out by not taking a break throughout the entire day. I feel like just taking like a 1 hour break to basically relax your mind um, is kind of the best way to reach that maximum flow state or that maximum potential. The other thing I also do is hiking, which is the exact same thing, except it's for a little bit of a longer time. And essentially, what hiking allows me to do is also have conversations with people that I can't normally have, because you're just like 3 hours with someone and you're just walking. So like, what exactly are you gonna do? So I feel like the best thing you can kind of do is talk with people. And I've had like incredible conversations about philosophy, um, with people on hikes. And like, I feel like it's kind of like an extended meeting with someone, and you learn so much about their personality just beyond, even if they're just my best friend. Like, I feel like I learned so much about them, the way they think, just by going on hikes with them. And then of course, if I'm going on a hike by myself, it also helps with self introspection. So
Awesome. Having having hobbies is a very great habit. And do something which you love, and do something that de-stresses you throughout the day, 1 hour. Or what do you suggest, like how much time do you spend on your hobbies each day, like personal time? What time do you have planned, do you have in mind every day?
yeah, so like I would recommend like at least like 2 to 2.5 hours. So like maybe like 1 hour for like music or whatever, and then like maybe I would say like 30 to 45 minutes of family time. And then I would recommend using a technique called like the Pomodoro technique, which essentially is 25 minutes of on time or work time, and then 5 minutes of off time, where you're essentially just walking around the house, or you're just talking with friends, and maybe you just hop on a quick FaceTime with someone. And I think if you add all those things up together, then that should be around 2 to 2.5 hours per day. And it's very important, again, to keep your mental sanity. You don't want to be like essentially um overstressing yourself, because your work productivity will keep decreasing over time. And I feel like that's the best way to do it.
Awesome. So basically, hobbies just keep you on the track, not too overly attached to your work and becoming like too, and that ultimately starts to get at your productivity. Spending too much time at one thing is dangerous, and I agree with you. So with this in mind, what technologies do you practice? You have mentioned it a couple of times, like once you solved a problem for your school and you're running an AI based startup. What technology do you practice, and how did this interest begin?
Yeah, so I guess I can kind of start with like my story and talk about like what different languages I guess I've learned in the throughout my time as a yeah throughout my time of learning these different things. So I started off with learning Python and block coding. That was essentially where I started off. Python, if you guys don't know, is a programming language, and essentially it's one of the most simplistic languages due to its syntax. And I feel like it was a great course to try to start off as a beginner. Then I kind of went into more complex languages. So I started off with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because I wanted to learn a little bit more about web development and essentially how to build websites. So from there, I built my startup website, like for Neuralyte. I've also built my students website. I've also built a couple websites for nonprofits that I run. And I feel that that's just a useful tool to have, because it allows you to essentially put your work out on the internet, which is like the fastest medium for communication in this day and age. Um, for game design, I would recommend learning C Sharp, which is an incredibly useful language for learning, for pairing with game design platforms like Unity and Unreal Learning. And then for app design, I learned a little bit of Swift, which is essentially the language you use for app design. And I feel that in terms of other technologies I've used just past programming languages, I feel a essential tool to learn in this day and age is something called cloud computing, where essentially a lot of the major services that we see in like today are like Netflix, Amazon, Facebook. All those are run on the cloud. And you might hear this like every once in a while, but essentially what this means is that your data is stored in these large server warehouses rather than being stored like in decentralized places. So everything is centralized in this one place. And one of the most common ones is called Amazon Web Services. And what this essentially does is that Amazon essentially controls all of these controls all of these different services. And essentially what they're able to do is like they're able to spread their data across all these different services so that the services run faster essentially. So that's a very essential tool to have, and that's the reason why many things run at such a cost efficient price these days, is because Amazon's the one taking control of all of these different data tools. So that's another really very useful tool to have. And I feel that knowing cloud computing and knowing those programming languages are some of the most useful things that you might gain in your life if you want to go into CS.
Yeah, I agree with you. Coding is one of the most important skills for the future, because you can apply it literally anywhere. You can combine it with finance. You can do something in healthcare. You can do something in any industry if you want to. Technology is an add-on which can be added to every industry, any industry you want to. And even if you become a doctor, even if you become something else in the future, technology is sure to come in handy.
Mm.
I totally agree with you on this. So, my viewers, technology is one of the most important skills. If you want to dive, if you feel that you're bored and you don't have anything to do, get into technology, and that's that's what I suggest. What how do you think technology is a key skill for the future for youth, and can you convince them to?
Yeah, so like pretty much technology is going to be I built everywhere, like in every single industry, like you were mentioning. So it's going to be like in finance, it's going to be in healthcare, and I feel it's a very useful skill to learn because it's already been seen in literally every sector. So you're going to need to interact with technology once in a while, and I feel that even if you're going into something that you may not think is technology related, everything in this day and age is technology related. It's important to learn how these things work. And I feel that that's the reason why it's important to be, I guess, like technology aware and understand essentially what the different technologies are that run the world, because knowing that allows you to be a stronger problem solver, because you're able to reference these different technologies and understand exactly how we can solve problems using the latest tools available.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Get into technology somehow and go to Coursera, do a couple of courses. If you're interested in you, there are many types of technologies. Watch few courses and do search on YouTube, search on Google. Just get into it. Now, besides technology, you worked with you worked with many interesting companies in bioinformatics. What did you? I think it was Ocean Genomics. What did you learn from the experience while working there? And what's the most interesting thing you did?
Yeah, so I can talk about the most interesting thing I did in ocean genomics. So essentially, what I was doing there was I was a computational biologist intern, and what I was doing over there was we were focusing specifically on degraded RNA samples, and RNA is very similar to DNA, except it's DNA is in a double strand, but RNA is in a single strand. Essentially, what we were doing with RNA was we are able to take RNA from a human and we're able to preserve it. But the problem is that it degrades over time. And it's been stored in these methods called formalin fixed paraffin embedded samples. And essentially, what that does is the chemicals used to preserve these samples essentially seeps into the RNA, which degrades it. So when we run sequencing technologies on it, so essentially reading the base pairs that make up that RNA, there's issues in the code. For instance, the base pairs are adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, but maybe one guanine might be switched to an adenine, or one cytosine might be switched to a thymine. So what we're looking at is how we can basically reduce the amount of bias and degradation, so we can reverse back time and look essentially what the original sample was, so we can run more accurate analysis. And I would specifically not on the wet lab side, or not looking specifically at what chemicals we can use to repair the RNA, but I was looking at how after we get the RNA, what can we do with it? So how can we essentially run different statistical and machine learning models to reverse back the degradation that's occurred? And this is very interesting because I was implementing this inside of their pipeline to increase accuracy. Because essentially what Ocean Genomics is trying to do is create an RNA sequencing pipeline from start to end. So basically, when you have an RNA sample, essentially running a full-on analysis of the entire RNA with like gene analysis, transcript analysis, among other services. So essentially, what I was trying to do was start at the beginning of that chain and make it so all the analysis later would be more accurate. And one thing I learned from this internship, beyond just the computational biology things that I've learned, I feel like I've learned the knowledge gap I currently have, and I feel that's why it's important to stay in academia and like go to school, go to college, because I was working with PhDs on these projects, and I feel that the level of knowledge they have simply comes from being around these tools for so long and learning this knowledge, working with problem solving in this space. I feel it's something that just comes with experience. It's not something that you can force. So that's something I feel I'd love to learn. And that's the reason why I think bioinformatics is, I think, even though it's one of the most highly sought after majors in the United States, I feel that it's one of the most difficult to learn because there's so much technical depth you need to learn to understand it. And I feel that's why it was very interesting to talk with people in this company. And I feel that I have to still learn a lot about the space, and that will only come from experience and actually working again in these companies and startups and building projects. So I think one advice I would have is essentially try to learn as much as you can and build projects. And just note that an internship doesn't mean that you're at the same level as your coworkers. And like, I don't think you should use it to like necessarily inflate your ego. I feel what you use internships as is a learning experience, because the best learning comes from being on the job and actually learning things and gaining that experience.
Yes. Um, Also, that of course that was one of the most interesting aspects of your life, working in such a great field. Uh, but one more thing, you also run student X student, and what can you tell us about your